Evening, everybody, and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee of Oxford City Council on Wednesday, the 26th of March, 2025. I'm Catherine Miles, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Before we start, we'll take apologies, and we have Councillor Khayyam and Councillor Mundy, who have both sent their apologies. Anyone else aware of any apologies? Councillor Rayal. Thank you. Noted. Okay. Turning to declarations of interest, has anyone got anything to declare on the agenda tonight? No. Okay, then two chairs' announcements. Welcome, Councillor Raymond, to the committee. You were just appointed on on Monday. We will be observing a short break at 6:25 because some of our members are observing Ramadan, and they will require a 10-minute break. So we will break from 6:25 to 6:35. As a result of this, we're also going to reorder the agenda to facilitate presentation from the Cabinet member, Lubna Arshad, who will also be needing to take a break at that time. So we will take the antisocial behaviour item, the update first of all, which was agenda item 8, and then we'll move on to urgent key decisions, which was originally item number 7, and then proceed through the remainder of the more administrative agenda. Welcome. Good evening. So without further ado, then we'll start with the antisocial behaviour update. And I welcome Councillor Lubna Arshad, the Cabinet Member for Safe Oxford, who looks like she's in the Pacific Island, but I believe is somewhere in Oxford. We've got Richard Adams, the Community Safety Service Manager, and I think, do we have Simon as well, or? No, just Richard as well. So to Councillor Arshad, if you could please introduce the report, and then I think Richard may add to that as well in a second. Over to you, Lubna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. So welcome everyone. Just wanted to give you an introduction. So we've got our antisocial behaviour report, and well, as you know, antisocial behaviour affects everyone, residents, businesses and visitors alike. It threatens our safety and well-being of our visitors, and it threatens the safety of our communities, and tackling it requires a clear, fair and robust approach. So every 3 years we bring forward a refreshed antisocial behaviour policy, ensuring it remains effective, transparent and responsive to the challenges we face. This is not just a policy, it is a commitment to protecting our communities. As a council, we have a statutory responsibility under the Crime and Disorder Act in 1998, as a landlord and through environmental legislation. We take these responsibilities seriously. As a responsible authority, we form part of the Oxford Safer Communities Partnership, and alongside other agencies, we have mandate to reduce crime and disorder, working together to tackle the root causes of ASB and keep our communities safe. So the draft 2025-2028 ASB policy in front of you outlines our approach to preventing and addressing ASB across Oxford. So today's meeting marks the beginning of the process. Following this discussion, a public consultation will help shape the final version before it returns to scrutiny and Cabinet in September. Our message is clear: ASB will not be tolerated, and we will work relentlessly to ensure Oxford remains a safe and welcoming place for all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Arshad. Richard Adams, would you like to add to the remarks from the Cabinet Member? Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a presentation. I don't know whether you want me to share it or whether somebody put it on the screen. So this was, as Lubna's mentioned, this is the beginning of our consultation process. It's a very short.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I can share it if you want to.
That would be brilliant. If you could just do screen share, that would be great. I think all the members in the committee have a copy, and we had it in our meeting pack, but it would be beneficial, I think, to share your screen while you present. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm now being tested. 1 second. Here we go. Can you see that?
Yes, if you just go down to the little icons on your right, lower right, and then you can do the full screen version of it, or the notes version, which is the second one along to your left. So there
How's that?
you,
Is that working?
yeah, we can see it. You can expand it by just going to the corner on the lower right-hand side where you zoom in and out.
Okay, I am struggling with this.
I think also if you press this F5, it might do.
F5 apparently also might work as well.
F5. So what can you see on the screen? Can you just see a kind of my notes version?
No, we can see the slides, but with the more of a
The full screen for me.
yeah. And not to worry. Well, we can continue like this.
Okay.
It's sufficiently.
It's more of a prompt for me, I think. If they're in the report, it's in the reports pack. So this is yeah, so this is the beginnings of the consultation process. So I came to Scrutiny back before Christmas and described the process that we need to undertake in 2025 to get the policy to cabinet by September. So we have drafted up a series of public consultation questions, and we've got a bit of a consultation plan with particularly with our tenants to fulfil the requirements of the Social Housing Act as well. So this was really an opportunity just to update Scrutiny on where we've got to and to give you more detail about what the current policy looks like and the sorts of things that we'll be asking about. The current policy is on our council website. It needs to be publicised, so it's up there at the moment. So this isn't a complete rewrite. It's about learning from the last 3 years, the things that we do, investigate what we can, what we can't do, and where the responsibility for some of addressing ASB lies with other organisations. So very quickly, this looks very legal speak, but this is basically what the definition of antisocial behaviour is. Some of these are ensconced in Acts of Parliament, the first two, and the other one we put in around our response to damaging of council property. So, in effect, it's harassment, alarm, and distress that cause to the victim. In terms of the housing context.
Rachel, could you just see if your slide can move to the next page? It's not moving on the screen. Sorry.
How about that? Can you see aims of the policy?
Yeah, we can see the aims. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, if you could let me know what you can see. I think I'm having a few IT problems. So the aims of our antisocial behaviour policy is to explain clearly what we will deal with and what we won't deal with. And if you look at what the broad definition of antisocial behaviour is often as important for people to understand the things that we won't deal with as a council, and we'll come to that in one of the slides. It's also very important to understand our service standards and our approach to dealing with reports of antisocial behaviour and what people can expect from us. And then alongside this policy, we have our procedures, which are much more detailed, standard operating procedures about how the teams go about doing things, making sure that we have consistent quality in our approach. So moving on, can you see consultation questions 1?
No, we can't. Unfortunately, it's not moving.
Would you like me to share it?
Oh, Celeste is going to share for us, so you can
Right, I'll stop
close down
sharing.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Apologies, I've had a few issues today with IT.
Don't worry, we all do. So, Celeste will be working on sharing it in the background. So please go ahead, Richard.
Okay. So we're putting out a public consultation after this meeting's finished in the next week. It's split into kind of 2 sections really. One is around people's experiences of antisocial behaviour in the last 12 months. What types did they experience? Breaking it down between environmental crime. A lot of people see things like fly tipping, fly posting, graffiti, litter, those sorts of things that affect and impact on their community. And also the neighbourhood nuisance and harassment and those types of person-on-person ASB. So there's a section that asks those types of questions, just so we get a flavour of what people in the city are experiencing. And then if you move on to the next slide. Then we want to sort of delve into what the policy standards are. So how we go about dealing with antisocial behaviour. And in the consultation it talks about the types of issues that the ASB is and ASB isn't, asking people whether they agree with those, how often they like to be communicated with. We have a standard where we will get back to you within 5 working days of your report, unless it's a priority one that we determine, i.e. involves serious violence, for example, and then it will be 3 working days. We're asking questions about those service standards. We have a default review of every case every 2 weeks. We want people's views about that. It can be more often if there's a direct communication with the victim in between times, but that's a kind of a backstop. So yeah, we want to ask more questions about those service standards and just sense check those. They're kind of national standards, national approaches that are quite common across local authorities. But we want to hear back from people. And then section 3 is a standard council series of questions about the respondent themselves and their demographic information. So we haven't put that in this slide. So if you want to move forward. So interestingly, this is an area that often causes debate about what is or isn't antisocial behaviour. What it is to one person isn't necessarily what it is to somebody else. So at the moment, the policy states, or the draft states, that we won't be investigating these types of issues. Children playing, boundary disputes around shared driveways, etc. Noise from vehicles on the highway carrying out their routine activities. Sometimes we get complaints about helicopters, we get complaints about police sirens and things like that. Reasonable living noise is a common issue, particularly in flats and communal blocks where you can hear people walking about above you. We have to make a determination as to whether that behaviour is unreasonable or not. And quite often, if it's ordinary reasonable living noise, then we won't investigate it as antisocial behaviour. Cycling, skateboarding and riding e-scooters on the pavement is dealt with by other people and other agencies. So at the moment, don't report it into the council. It's a police or it's a highways authority issue. We won't investigate alcohol consumption in a public place. But there's a common misperception that you can't drink in a public space in the city. You can, but you can't cause antisocial behaviour whilst doing it, and that's when our public space protection order kicks in. Sporadic noises. This is really about the late nighttime economy, people walking through streets being a bit rowdy and a bit loud. It's a kind of one-off situation. There was no evidence that we could get hold of. We can't stop it happening in the future, so we won't deal with sporadic noise. And flying drones, that's something for the Civil Aviation Authority or the police to deal with, so we won't investigate those. And then finally, I think it's the final one. So this, in the current policy, these are the 2 categories that give you the sort of types of activities that we will investigate. The first slide talked about the definition of antisocial behaviour, which is the thing that we go to when we look at reports. But then in terms of the themes and the types of issues that we deal with most commonly, or that we want to respond back in a shorter time period, you can see the 2 categories here. So category 1's hate-related incidents and where there's violence involved, safeguarding, domestic abuse, all those kind of serious issues that we need to get involved in sooner, but we are not the emergency service. So it's not about contacting us to do something about the immediate issue. That's a 999 call. But in terms of our priority internally to make sure that we are engaging with our partners and involved if necessary, we put a 3 working day timescale on category 1. And then category 2, as you can see, noise, verbal abuse, well, you can see the list down there, but these are kind of the lower level ASB, and it's a 5 working day turnaround period for contacting the complainant. So that hopefully that's a kind of helpful list of themes and topics. It's not a definitive list, but it's the most common ones that we deal with. And then if we scroll on, I think we might be at the end.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you. Just a quick question from my side. Just on that last list, there's something called car report wording. What does that mean? Could that be clarified, please?
1 second.
I think it might be a typo, but just in
could-
case there's my lack of technical knowledge.
It could well be a typo. Let me just double check. And no, okay, that is a typo. It's to do with car repairs and things like that, which have
Okay.
an environmental impact, particularly when you get oil spillage out on the street and running into drains and stuff like that, or running a business from your personal property that impacts on the neighborhood. So yes, that's I think the wording was a prompt to reword that element.
Okay, thank you. So I will open up to the floor and see whether anyone has any questions. Yes, sir. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Can't hear anything.
Lee, maybe, yeah, we're just
Use
what.
Councillor Tino's mic,
Oh,
just because it can, oh no, it's working.
oh, that one's working. Okay, sorry. Ah, is
I can hear you now, Mike.
no, that's all right. Good. Yes, 3 questions, hopefully quickly. First of all, I'd always understood that the target for removing racist graffiti was 24 hours, but the target for responding is 3 days. And is that a discrepancy?
No, the target for removing it by ODS, you're absolutely right. It's earlier than 24 hours. It's usually within a few hours. But investigating it and contacting the complainant and doing the slow time follow-up stuff, that would come to us, and we have a 3-day turnaround. In practice, it's often a lot sooner than that.
Thanks. The second question was, does the ASB service routinely pass on complaints which aren't properly the responsibility of the ASB service? For example, you mentioned noise in flats from what may be perfectly ordinary day-to-day family activity, but actually it's a matter for the councillor's landlord, for example, because there isn't proper sound insulation in the flat. Is it, does the service, or it's a matter for the police, for example, does the service routinely pass things on in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will contact the complainant and tell them that we're referring them on. So one of the most common ones is around drug misuse and the smell of cannabis, etc. And that is a police matter to investigate. We will absolutely refer that on or encourage the person to contact the police direct because they want first-hand information. If it's a living noise issue, we'll speak to our housing colleagues about whether there's anything that can be done. Quite often it's about a rug, or they put laminate flooring down, perhaps when maybe they shouldn't have done. And if it's a landlord, if it's another landlord, we will contact them first off because they have a better opportunity to deal with behaviour than us going in. So we will go in and help and support them, but it's often a better resolution if their own landlord has a discussion about their behaviour with their tenants.
Thanks. And the final quick question is just for reassurance that that discretion is used rather than the category of it, the category of the behaviour reported.
Yeah.
I think it was the jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes who said, "My neighbour's right to swing his fist ends where my nose begins." Similarly, kids playing in the street is not ASB, but if the ball whizzes through the old lady's window and hits her in the head, presumably that will be investigated.
Yeah, so everything is done on a case-by-case basis, and discretion is one important element. The other important element in the policy is that our intervention is at the lowest level suitable for the case. So again, that's about proportionality and making sure that we don't default to fines and prosecutions and stuff like that. If I have my way, most of these things, and actually commonly they are resolved by support agencies and mediation, and just people getting to get on with each other. So yeah. Definitely, Mike. Discretion is definitely used.
I think Councillor Stairs had a hand. We've got Councillor Artino, Councillor Rayman, and we've got 5 minutes. Actually, we might, before we have to pause, just to alert you, because we are going to take a pause in a few minutes. So we'll go to Councillor Stairs first of all and work around. Thank you.
Can you tell me, are you limited in your powers? I mean, I'm thinking of a particular case which I won't share here, but would be inappropriate. But that I can see is ticking probably 1 and several of number 2, and nothing seems to be moving. So I'm just wondering, are you limited with what you can do with these situations?
So the range of powers is fairly fulsome, I think. We've got at the top end closure orders, you can shut a property, injunctions you can apply to a court for an injunction, community protection notices, which limits a person's behaviour. So I think the tools that are available, and these new respect orders that may be coming out as well this year, kind of give us all the tools that we need alongside the mediation and the conversations. The issue that holds us back is evidence, and and that's something that we rely and depend upon. We can't serve a notice or apply for an injunction or a closure order because courts will not, they won't give them to us. So there has to be that the level of evidence that means that we can go in front of a judge and say, can we have this closure order, for example? Sometimes we get support from the victim, and we might be putting a closure order on a property that they want us to close on their behalf. So that's kind of the easy bit. But commonly, the thing that holds us back the most is evidence gathering by those people affected.
Thank you. Councillor Artino, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a little anxious by your terms environmental crime. I heard what you described it was, but I'm just worried that if you put that out there, with those 2 words, you might get other people interpreting it in different ways beyond that. So I'm wondering whether you can think of another heading. Otherwise, you might get lots of people complaining about their, I don't know, neighbours taking too many air flights or something. The thing about the obstruction of the highways, my experience is when you talk to the police about it, they say they're not interested in that at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we're putting out some sort of policy statement to the public and also to us as councillors, you need to be clear exactly about who we're reporting obstruction of the highway to. And if it's somebody on the county council, who on the county council we're doing it. I'm pretty confident the police say they're not really interested. And I think it'd be useful to sort of clearly define what the highway is. Is verges, pavement? Is there a difference if a verge is obstructed or a pavement obstructed? And then you've got all those spaces on the estates, particularly where on HRA land, we built car parking spaces, which often then have abandoned vehicles in them full of junk, which have got SORN notices on, and it's not really clear whether anybody can, that clearly that's not where spaces are designed for.
Yeah.
But clearly, it's really difficult for any action to be taken.
Councillor Artino, we're going to have to pause in about 2 minutes. Have you got any final question on that?
Yeah, so sort of final question about stuff in gardens. So you're sort of saying it's antisocial behaviour for sort of pests and whatever. Are you happy for us just to report to you gardens where there are 4 or 5 mattresses lying around? We don't know whether there's pests on there or not, but they're just making the place look awful. And what actual powers do you have? I suppose you have more powers if they're city council tenants, but when they're housing association tenants or private, sometimes the rubbish is there from the landlord, I think. But yeah, what sort of powers do you have there?
Thank you. If you quickly can answer that in about 2 minutes, and then we will have to take a quick pause just to respect that some of our members need to go for prayers. Thank you.
Sure. Environmental crime, yeah, have a look at the wording on that. It's a maybe a slightly antiquated phrase around those sorts of environmental offences. Obstruction of the highways. I have had a recent conversation with County Council about that and the difference between obstruction of a road, highway, and a pavement, bins on pavements, etc. So far, the Thames Valley Police's website, their view and how they describe it is really informative. And I'm thinking about how we would link our information, our website to their view. So absolutely looking into that at the moment. And then gardens and pests. So we don't want to be the kind of messy garden police. But if a messy garden is an indication of potential pest issues or a family struggling and we need to make a referral, then we will pick those cases up. So best send them in, we triage and then and take those forward. The powers that we have, we've got PDPA, we've got Prevention of Damage by Pests Act that we can use to get the property owner to clear up. If it's just mattresses and there's lots of bulky waste, then we can do something else.
Thank you, Richard. We're going to pause now for 10 minutes. I think, Councillor Arshad, will you be returning or in 10 minutes? Okay, great. Richard, you're more than welcome just to hang around, but we'll be back in 10 minutes. All right, thank you very much. Hi, Richard, are you still there? Excellent.
Yep.
Hi, Councillor Usher, thank you for coming back. So I think we were continuing around with our questions before we open up for kind of a wider discussion. I think Councillor Rayman had a question and next, so we'll go to him, and I think there were some others as well, but Councillor Rayman, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, on the consultation, how does that differ from previous consultations? Have we changed anything substantially, or is it just the same consultation that's gone out again that was gone out 3 years ago? As number one. I know you said that something around drinking in public spaces. How do we ascertain that? And if there's a say that in a park or a public sort of open space, if there's constant complaints, do you monitor? How do we go and monitor that, or check at certain times of the day to ascertain if it's just drinking or if there's antisocial behaviour to go with it? That's 2 questions really.
Okay. The consultation process is similar to previous times, but there's a greater emphasis this time around on tenant involvement and tenant voice, making sure that we set up some focus groups and actually hear from our own tenants around that. And that's been strengthened because of the Social Housing Act and the responsibilities that we have as a landlord. So similar, but a bit of additional stuff happening. In terms of drinking in public spaces, it is so we put the Public Space Protection Order in place. So it's a power that council officers and the police can both use. So if there are reports from the public around people behaving antisocially, then we can approach people and use the order. Where there are repeated reports of locations, and I can think of one in particular a couple of years ago in Cowley, we worked with the neighbour policing team to, between us, attend that park at particular times of the week and days of the week where those reports are coming in, and between us kind of problem solve the issue and dealt with it. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on between the neighbour policing team and the city council's antisocial behaviour team. We're really quite well connected, and we have a police computer in the town hall that we can access and support us in our work as well. So yeah, we do monitor it, and we will take action, but quite often that's reasoning with people. I suppose the final thing around alcohol is that we also have to take into account the health and safety of our staff. So if there is something that we under our risk assessment feel it's not appropriate that we would engage in, then that would be a police matter that we'd refer to them.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got one in a second. Is it Councillor Ottino? Anyone else? Yeah, okay, Councillor Ottino, and then I come in as well.
I mean, you mentioned the different housing associations. Do you actually have good contacts with all of them? 'Cause some of them are quite small, and so I know as a councillor, you struggle to know who to contact at them.
Yeah.
And are you saying you'd be rather we over-reported stuff to you at first so we're just emailing Safe for Oxford, are we? And you maybe could get back to us and say, no, this isn't the sort of thing we should be dealing with. Yeah, those are the 2 things.
Okay. Good contacts with some registered providers, particularly the bigger ones, and particularly where they have a local member of staff that kind of focuses in Oxford. So it's much easier to have that happening. Otherwise, we make a referral into what ends up being a kind of regional hub, and it's allocated to a person that may cover a really large area. There are certain powers that they can't do, and I know that there's some changes in law due which will allow them to do closure orders, for example. So where we do get a property where we've got a vulnerable person living there in a registered provider's property, the police will lead on the closure order, and we will advise them. And when it comes to noise complaints, we've got a statutory duty to investigate noise nuisance. the first part of that investigation is to refer to the landlord for them to take action, engage with their tenant, etc., etc. But if that does not work, then we'll get involved with our noise monitoring equipment and take over the kind of case that way. So in general, it works pretty well. I think that we could and should strengthen our connection with some of the registered providers. In terms of over-reporting, I've got to be very careful what I say because it's probably videoed and my staff will not thank me for it. So we do try and provide triage information on our website to allow people to make the right referral to the right place, because there's no point in them contacting us when they should be contacting the police. The police, and for us to refer on to the police, they want to hear from it first hand from the complainant. So we do our best to help people understand what we will and what we won't do, what we can and what we can't do. So I wouldn't suggest over-reporting. If there are particular issues in your ward that are constantly cropping up and you want to have a conversation about the best approach to dealing with that, then get in contact with us and email Safer Oxford and we can have a specific conversation with you about it. If there are hotspots, and I'm thinking about environmental issues as they're here, definitely want to know about that. You can use Fix My Street and the referral will come back into the City Council where appropriate. So that's another way of dealing with those issues, but very happy to have an offline conversation about things if that's something that you'd like to do.
Thank you, Richard. So just a couple of questions from my side. You referred to some of the issue around evidence gathering and the difficulties of that. How do you deal with it with the case of like cannabis smoking in blocks of flats? Because I know as we all go around canvassing and knocking on people's doors, do ward work, we will often notice that that can be an issue and it affects many households. So yeah, how do you deal with that and coordinate with the police to gather that evidence or support the neighbours to do that? The second question is is a question of coordination, and how do you or where do you see that there are gaps at the moment in where there are different agencies responsible for things, and that, so I give you a concrete example. We were talking about the county council being responsible for dealing with parking enforcement, but then the police are the ones that are enforcing parking obstructions at junctions. That's the parking enforcement agency isn't able to do that because that's in the police powers. So yeah, how do these things get addressed? And another example would be even within the council rather than between different agencies. So if there's an issue with a fly tipping which might be linked to certain HMOs, how do you deal with these internal coordination between teams to address the issue, and are there any kind of gaps there or ways that that coordination could be strengthened? Thank you.
So in terms of evidence gathering, we try and provide so noise complaints are the biggest type of complaint that we deal with. About 60% of our cases have a noise issue in it. So we advertise the use of the Noise app, which people can download on their phone. And it's a very popular way of reporting into us. We can then, from the back end, listen to those recordings, get in contact with the complainant, discuss the issue with them, and work out a plan of action. So where we can provide evidence gathering facility, we'll absolutely do that. When it comes to cannabis, there was a good example the other day of somebody reporting that a person was leaning out the window smoking cannabis. Immediately referred to the police. They went round there and spoke to the individual. Where you've got a group of flats and it's very difficult to ascertain where the smell is coming from unless you visually see it, because it's a very pervasive smell. It can travel quite long distances as well. People do it from vehicles as well. I mean, it's a very difficult thing. But we will work with the police on that, and where evidence can be shown or an indication of where where the source is coming from, then the neighbour policing team will go around and talk to them. If it's a breach of our tenancy agreement, then we'll follow up with action around our own tenants. But it's becoming more and more common. You know, it's something that local councillors talk to us about a lot, and it's one of the hardest things to prove. In terms of that kind of cannabis smell going down the corridor of a block of flats, for example, I mean, I don't have the technical expertise to say that's cannabis, but where you've got a noxious smell that impacts on the community, there are other pieces of legislation that we could use around the smell rather than what's causing it. So, but we do work very closely with the police on that. In terms of coordination gaps, I'd like to say we don't have any, but I'm sure I'm sure we do, or I haven't found them. We work very well with ODS around the environmental enforcement stuff. They evidence gather for us. We pick up the evidence, we bring it back, and we use it for our cases. We use data to hotspot those locations, and we do early morning patrols with ODS around fly tipping in particular. In terms of other council teams, we work very closely with the regulatory team who deal with HMOs and HMO enforcement, not just on ASB, but around safeguarding reports as well. So we have a joined up approach around that. We also work clearly very closely with housing. We provide a landlord services function. And so we work very, very closely with our housing colleagues. We have we do a lot of work around complex cases where we have people in our stock or in our temp stock who may have vulnerabilities and challenges in their lives. That means that regulating their own behaviour is quite difficult, and it impacts on the other people in the block and the wider community. We have a dispersed model of housing as well, so fewer large hostels and more people out in the community. So there's more community impact to a point. So we do a lot of work doing proactive visits to those people. We know them quite well. We build relationships with people. We make sure that they get the right support. They're often engaged with necessary support services. We get in contact with GPs, Turning Point, the police, whoever it needs to be. And we will use enforcement powers in those cases, but it is definitely, our approach is carrot and stick. And carrot comes first, and safeguarding trumps everything. And then it's about trying to get people to change their behaviour and understand the impact of their behaviour through supporting them. And if that doesn't work, then there is, obviously the kind of ultimate goal. So we do a lot of work with housing needs and our own housing teams as well. So I think it's pretty good in terms of partnership environment in the city. We are well connected with an awful lot of different agencies. We know who to turn to. You gave the example of roads and highway. This is something that we don't overly deal with unless it's HRA land, and then we'll work with our landlord services colleagues. Obstruction of the highway in terms of the road, police have powers to clearly lift and shift and get the blockage out of the way. It gets more complicated when we're talking about pavements and we're talking about inconsiderate people where wheelchair users can't get round and things like that. And I've been in contact with the county council about that particular issue, and they say it's very important to make that distinction, and it's very important to think about parking in terms of the controlled parking zones that they enforce, as opposed to irresponsible parking and what their powers are. So it's not an area that we lead on. It's the police and county council's area to lead on. We do get complaints about it. We just got to make sure that we give the right advice. And Councillor Tino's comment earlier about the police don't seem to be interested. Their website does explain that actually, in terms of priority, they will deal with certain obstructions of the highway and won't deal or won't prioritise others. And it's a useful read on the Thames Valley Police website.
Thank you very much. This is helpful. And just a follow up I have on the inconsiderate parking. I understand that is it Swindon have been looking at addressing this through sort of a slightly new approach, because where pavements, for instance, they're our responsibility as a city council, even if but that's they're often owned by us. The road is owned by the county, but where we see hotspots can be around where there are cafes, for instance. In my ward, we've addressed this through being able to put up wands, and that has stopped the parking, but it's not always feasible to do that. So there are ways that I think Swindon have been using new rules to address pavement parking. Is that something you've looked into? Or is that something that we could explore further?
So I'm very happy to talk to county colleagues about Swindon, and look into it in more detail. If there's a role for landlord services on HRA land where we're responsible, then that's something that we could explore. It's really about who's got the power and I suppose the budget to a point to take it forward. Parking on pavements and irresponsible parking is not something that usually comes into my service area under the kind of banner of ASB. But I'm very happy to speak to my county contact I'm talking to, and explore what that Swindon project is all about.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, we've got a comment from Councillor Tina, and then I think we're going to open up for the floor unless we've got any final questions. Okay, Councillor.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just wondering whether what's missing from this policy is something about maybe redesign of public spaces. There's a lot of parts of the city, I'm thinking Blackbellies in particular, where you've got alleyways everywhere, disused garages that are basically a magnet for many types of antisocial behaviour. And I know there's one place where they built some houses, I think, or they're just about to be finished, but I feel like in our policy we ought to put something more about being more proactive about having a vision of what these places might be. Obviously, that costs lots of money, which we might not have, but that might include, for instance, this pavement and verge parking. There are bollards somewhere, in some places, with a lot of screaming and nagging. You can just about get a bollard replaced that's broken, but it's impossible to get a bollard put in where there wasn't one before. But clearly parking on, some verges just get an absolute mess and they upset a lot of people, and there's nothing we can do about it.
So yeah, I'll take that one away. We do have an excellent officer in the community safety team who is a problem-solving officer, and so he does an awful lot of work with planners and those kind of environmental designers and the police's own design out crime officer to look at opportunities where there are new developments and make sure that we're not designing in problems in the future. So yeah, take your point, that only happens when the new development comes along, but that's kind of, I suppose, where we are. But we do have a person who's crime reduction level 5 trained in that and works very closely with planners. So whether it's this policy or whether it's a discussion with planners around how do we make sure that designing out crime is an element of their approach, which I know it is, particularly on major developments, because the police get involved in those. What we now have is a list of applications for smaller developments where the police can't deal with those because of their capacity, and we look at those as well. So I can double check on that. I sense that design out crime will be a planning policy statement, but I will have a look into that.
Thank you, Richard. So then moving on just to a discussion around recommendations based on what we've heard, are there any areas that you think that we might want to formulate a recommendation around the ASB draft policy and the survey that is going ahead? Are we just simply going to note it, or are there any recommendations that have emerged from our discussion that relate to this policy draft? I think there were some more general points. There's maybe this point that Councillor Tino has just raised around exploring the extent to which ASB can be addressed through design of public spaces. That could be explored to be included in as a clause within the draft. And receive public comment on that. as a possible recommendation? I'm seeing some nods of faces.
Yeah.
Councillor Stairs.
Yeah, I think so. My husband's actually retired police officer and was on the panel when Greater Leeds was being designed. And he was really cross that he told the council, don't put in lots of alleyways, but they didn't listen and they put it in. So this is like deja vu that I'm hearing. So I think it's really important that these agencies are listened to. Thanks.
So if we're to put in a recommendation that the draft policy considers a clause including a reference to safe by design in public spaces, the concept of safe by design in public spaces, I see some nods of heads. Does that work? Because then we can get, then the feedback could be provided through that the consultation process on whether that is worth including as a potential option, but could put that as a recommendation. Richard, does that sound something that would be feasible to include, and would it be the appropriate time to include it if we had something along those lines?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking that I can certainly go out and add it as a question in the consultation, but actually it's just as easy to have it included as a clause in the policy or a principle. But what I need to do before I do that is to check with planners that it's already a policy. Because if it's already a policy statement that we should be approaching this like this, then our ASB policy needs to reference that. So it may already exist. Rather than consulting on it and asking people if it's a good idea, I think most people would say that designing out an issue would be a good idea. You're kind of guaranteed to get a very positive answer to that question. But I will check whether there is a policy connect that I need to incorporate.
Okay, so just to clarify, that would be a policy. It would either cross-reference the existing policy elsewhere, or it would include a reference to this principle within the policy. So our recommendation would be that it does one or the other, depending on what the situation is, if there is an existing policy. Councillor Tino.
Just clarify, because I imagine that planners are interested in new things, but I think what I'm talking about is places that already exist, which are magnets for antisocial behaviour, and probably there's nothing planned, and unless we do plan something, they will become even worse magnets for antisocial behaviour. So it's about those spaces that have just become abandoned by the garages no longer fit cars, nobody goes down that alleyway, and they can be quite scary places to be.
Okay. I need to think about that, because what you're describing is absolutely what happens at the moment, where we do get hotspots and we need to fund amendments to those locations and have and be able to access the resources to be able to make the changes. We won't be able to shut alleyways. I mean, I can shut alleyways down. You can get gating orders and do that, but that's kind of not what I'm thinking about. But where there needs to be additional lighting, where there needs to be some minor design improvements, often the struggle is not the will, but it's the funding. So having said that, on our own HRA land, we do have access to some area improvement budget, so we can use that. But when it's other parts of the city, it becomes more of a struggle. So whether that's a policy statement or whether that is a conversation I need to have internally about budgeting and to support that problem-solving approach, I'm not sure.
Maybe it's that the wording of the clause that is included within the ASB policy can be applied in different circumstances. So in both new and existing infrastructure. That I guess it would be a matter of how it was worded. I'm going to just ask Celeste, because I think we have to agree what the exact wording is, or almost exact wording for the recommendation. Have you got something that, from what we've said so far, do you have sufficient information? Or
I believe I do, yes, Councillor. Yes, I should. Like I said, I can't really back the exact wording, but I think I've got the spirit of what the committee is trying to say
Yeah.
on this.
Okay, everyone satisfied with the spirit of the recommendation? And, okay, in which case, are there any, and welcome Councillor Latif to the meeting. We're just wrapping up on the discussion on the antisocial behaviour draft policy. Any other recommendations that anyone think has emerged from our discussion? Yeah, Councillor Jarvis.
I don't know whether you were going to recommend this one yourself, Catherine, but your point around Swindon and approaches to tackling problematic and pavement parking, I think would be useful to have as a recommendation that we look at what other authorities are doing, what approaches they're taking to address that. Yeah.
Okay. So the recommendation, which I would also support if others do as well, is that we recommend that the council look at approaches other authorities have taken to address pavement parking. And noting that this is an area where there are multiple agencies with responsibilities.
Observation is there aren't there unitary authorities, Swindon, so they've probably got more powers than we have. I think they.
We shall find out, and there may be others. So maybe that's the recommendation. We'll find out that information. Councillor Arshad.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that Oxfordshire County Council have like leaflets that you can print off and put on cars as well when they are doing it. And obviously, I've also written to the cabinet member across the pond about this, and as well as Annalise Stodds. So yeah, just waiting on a response.
So just to clarify, you've requested that stickers are developed, that because I think they've been used in the past, but that they're developed that residents can use to put on offending vehicles. Is that right?
No, what I'm saying is that at the moment in County Council there is a website you can go on their website, and you can download the leaflet if you wish to print it and then put it on cars. There is that. Yeah, you can do that. And apart from that, I'm saying that the parking that is being done on pavements, I have, as per council questions, written to our MP as well as our cabinet member in the county council.
Thank you for that. So at this point, have we got any final recommendations on the ASB policy? And if not, we've got then our two recommendations, the one on the safe by design and the one on other authorities' approaches to addressing pavement parking where there are multiple responsible entities or policy gaps. Okay, well, at this point then, thank you, Richard. Thank you very much, Councillor Arshad. We really appreciate all your hard work on this. We look forward to the consultation going out as well, and this item coming back to scrutiny later on in the year in its final form. So thank you for your time and good luck with the next step in the process.
Thanks very much.
Great. So then we move on to item number 5, which is urgent key decisions. The end of the year update. This was originally item number 7. Jonathan Moulton, Committee and Member Services Manager, will introduce the report, which is something that we had requested as scrutiny. So over to you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So, as you rightly said, this was a report requested from your meeting of the 14th of January to list out the urgent key decisions that the Council had taken for the current municipal year. In the report, hopefully self-explanatory, but it lists all 5 urgent decisions that have been taken from 1st of October, 30th of October, 28th of November, 19th of December and the 23rd of December. I'll just briefly note, since the report was presented back in January, myself and the monitoring officer have implemented quite a few changes. to how we do some of the governance. So, for example, we have an additional forward plan that takes all key decisions that are required by law to be on the website for 28 days before the decision is taken. Say it's published weekly, so that has allowed more flexibility with officers and has been able to catch any decisions that are due to be taken 28 days after publication. So, say I'm happy to take any questions, but hopefully the report is quite self-explanatory.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and for the work in implementing these changes as well. Any questions? Okay. Is there anything that anyone wants to do? Yeah. Anything that anyone wants to debate based on this? And I would just say that I think having such a report seems to be very valuable, even if we aren't debating it. It's useful to have that all in one place. So I would suggest, I think it's already planned that we will, can we just clarify, Jonathan, are we going to be doing this every year or is this a one-off? Thank you.
We can do. Within the Constitution, we have to report all urgent key decisions to Council. So you would have seen between, I think, from the November meeting and the meeting in January, we obviously reported all urgent key decisions that had been taken during the reporting period. So we can bring this as an annual report, but it also comes through to Council literally after we've taken the decision, a report is drafted to be presented to full Council. So we'll take the committee steer, but as I say, it is reported through the Constitution anyway.
Thank you. Any thoughts on whether you would like a summary report at scrutiny? Thank you.
Didn't this come up because you spotted that there were a large number of them? So are they reporting to you as the chair anyway?
As scrutiny chair, you have to sort of sign off these decisions in terms of the waiver that is given, so that basically a call-in period that would otherwise be happening doesn't happen when an urgent decision comes. So scrutiny chair is made aware of that. And you are all, as members, made aware in full Council, as Jonathan has mentioned. So we will get that information, we will be informed. So you may feel that it's not necessary that we separately have a summary report each year to scrutiny. But given the number compared to previous years, that was why it was requested this time. Yeah, please.
I think so the work is done so that you report to full Council, so having it in one place is perfect. We should have it every year. You could miss one, or maybe if there's loads of urgent decisions, we would probably want to know why there's so many urgent decisions. So it'd be good to have them all sort of regulated in one place, I think.
Thank you. So that's supportive of this summary approach. So we then continue with having the summary report to see, yeah, please.
Could I offer a suggestion that obviously myself and the monitoring officer put in quite a few procedures to hopefully catch all of these, what would be urgent key decisions, to hopefully mean that they're not urgent. We don't need the chair scrutiny's guidance to take the decision. Could I suggest that obviously if we do have another flurry of urgent decisions, obviously I can't make any promises, but I say hopefully the things we put in place mitigate that. Obviously, if we are having to go to the chair scrutiny next municipal year with, I suppose, similar to what we've had, then of course we could provide you a draft of a report to kind of update you where we're at and obviously any actions. But as I say, if you want us to be an annual report, we're happy to provide, but could we put an asterisk on it to say, if we have another issue like we did this year, then it would be useful for the committee to review?
I would say at the discretion of the chair of scrutiny then, yeah. So if the chair of scrutiny feels we need it, then we should have it.
Any other thoughts? Yeah. So what we could recommend is that there is value in a summary report of urgent key decisions, end of year update, if the scrutiny chair it notices a trend of high frequency of such decisions, and the request for such a summary report would be at the discretion of the chair. Chair, please, just go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Because it's just a summary of the decisions already made, it's just a collation of data, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a collection of all the reports from full council, yes.
Yeah, so I still think that we should just have it every year because it's only a collection of data. It's not. Yeah, it's, you know, hopefully there's less decisions, so then there's less work in itself anyway. So I think it would be quite good to have that actually.
So if we were to do this, maybe what we could do is recommend that that there is a summary report in the next municipal year. So we're not committing that it would always happen, but if we request for one next year, we can then be satisfied as scrutiny that this increased trend has been addressed through the measures that have been put in place. Would that satisfy everyone? Yeah. So in which case then we would recommend that a summary report of the urgent key decisions end of year update is provided for the next municipal year, and the annual provision of this is reviewed based on the results of that report. Does that work? Yeah. Okay. So have you got that wording? Is that, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. In which case then, I don't think there are any other recommendations regarding that. So then we move to the remainder of the agenda. We have the minutes from the 3rd of March. There are two minor amends in that have been noted. One is there's a reference to a financial value which reads 1.8 and the word million, I think, has been missed off. So that would be amended. And that's on page 15. There's another amend that is needed. It's just a typo on page 16 where it reads hard when it should be heard. Other than that, has anyone else spotted any other amends? No, in which case, subject to those amends, are you happy as scrutiny to approve the minutes? Yes, I think everyone's in agreement there. So the minutes are approved, subject to those changes. We then move to item number 7, which is the work plan, which was originally item number 5. Celeste, if you could just introduce the work plan, please, to us.
Thank you, Chair. Just to inform the committee, there's 4 items that are slated for the next meeting, which is in June. They are the scrutiny operating principles for the next year's municipal year, the annual complaint performance and service improvement report, leisure investment program update, and domestic abuse policy for service users, which has been deferred from previous meeting. There will be an updated floor plan that is going to be published on the 1st of April. If there are any particular items that the committee would like to consider once that is published, please feel free to contact myself. Otherwise, any amendments to the work plan will be agreed with yourself, Chair, or otherwise the succeeding Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Celeste. So any questions on the work plan? No. Okay, so then item number 8, which is report back on recommendations, which was originally item number 6. So you have before you a report summarising the feedback from the Cabinet's response to the recommendations. They're all set out in the agenda pack, and as you can see, our recommendations and those of the panels were accepted. I will hand over to Celeste if there's anything you want to report back on the panel's recent activities.
Thank you. Just to say that only the housing panel met since the committee's last meeting on 3rd of March. They considered 5 substantive items, including the selective licensing year 2 update, housing ombudsman, complaint handling code self-assessment, building safety and compliance, temporary accommodation and homelessness update, and complaint case to the ombudsman. Altogether made 3 recommendations, which are all set out in the agenda pack for your information.
Thank you, Celeste, and thank you for your work on all of that. So any questions on any of that? No. Okay, well, that leads us to our last agenda item, which is dates of future meetings. The next scrutiny meeting is on the 10th of June this year. And it will be a new composition of members and also a new chair. So I take this opportunity to say thank you to all of you for serving on the committee and thank the officers for all their support during this municipal year. And we'll see who comes back to the committee next year or in June. Thank you, everybody, and good night. Thank you.